For 100 long years, the aliens trained with endless patience and endless hunger for victory. They were not a simple race of wanderers in the stars. They were a people born with war in their blood and conquest in their minds. And every day that passed added to their desire to claim Earth as their prize. Generations of soldiers were raised with only one purpose: to invade the blue world that had once escaped their grasp. They remembered an old defeat, a small loss in the eyes of the galaxy, but to them a shame that could never be forgotten. They swore that the humans would kneel and they would never again underestimate a species from a small planet. In vast halls of steel and light, the alien commanders walked among lines of recruits. Each soldier stood tall in armor that gleamed like silver knives, their bodies stronger than iron, and their minds drilled into perfect obedience. Their voices rose in chants that shook the walls, chants of war, chants of conquest, chants of a promised victory after a century of waiting. Their training was endless. Every day they fought in great arenas that echoed with the sound of metal and fire. They learned how to march as one and how to strike without mercy. They fired weapons that could burn through stone, and they piloted ships that could turn night into day. They were promised glory if they survived the trials. And those who failed were cast aside as nothing more than fuel for the cause. The alien fleets grew larger every year, giant ships built in hidden shipyards beyond dying stars, each ship filled with thousands of warriors, each ship carrying weapons older than some civilizations, weapons designed only for one task, the task of burning Earth into silence. Their leaders smiled with cold pride, for they believed no defense could stop them. No resistance could last against 100 years of perfect preparation. The younger soldiers asked why Earth mattered so much, why they must wait 100 years before striking, and the elders told them stories. They spoke of a battle long ago when humans had faced them and fought back harder than expected, when human courage had cut deeper than alien claws, when human fire had burned hotter than alien steel, and though the aliens had left Earth untouched, they carried the memory, like a wound that never healed, a wound that demanded revenge. The training continued across endless decades. Entire cities of soldiers rose and fell. New generations replaced the old. The alien culture twisted itself around this single purpose. Children were raised with pictures of Earth hanging in their barracks. Maps of human cities were studied as if they were sacred texts. Every lesson ended with the same words: soon you will march on Earth. Soon you will prove your strength. Soon the humans will fall. Alien scientists labored in silence as well, building weapons that no human eye had ever seen, machines that could break the ground and split the sky, engines that carried fleets faster than light, armor that could absorb the heat of stars, all designed with one goal in mind: the destruction of humanity. The scientists, too, were promised honor. For an alien culture, there was no higher glory than serving the invasion. The commanders grew older, but their ambition never faded. One by one, they passed their titles to younger leaders who had been raised in this century of preparation. Each new leader carried the same oath. Each swore that the blood of humans would water the soil of Earth. Each swore that their people would never again live with the shame of defeat. They told their soldiers that they were not simply warriors. They were destiny itself, marching toward one final victory. The stars around the alien homeworld burned with watchful silence. They had witnessed the rise of countless fleets, the endless drills, the screams of training, the death of weak recruits, and the roar of victors. The galaxy whispered of the coming storm. Some races feared the aliens. Some hoped they would succeed, but none doubted that Earth would fall when the time came. None but the humans themselves who had not yet seen what was waiting in the dark. The soldiers dreamed of the day of invasion. In their sleep, they saw Earth burning. In their visions, they saw humans on their knees. They were taught that humans were weak and soft, that humans had no true power, that humans had survived only by luck. They believed these lessons because they were repeated every day for 100 years, and belief turned into truth for them, though the real truth was far more dangerous. The alien war drums echoed through their world, endless rhythms that drove their hearts to fight. They lived by the beat of war and died by it too. They raised monuments not to peace, but to conquest, each stone carved with the image of Earth broken beneath alien banners. Entire generations grew up never knowing peace, only the promise of war. only the call to strike at humanity. The elders who once warned that humans were not to be underestimated were silenced, their voices forgotten in the noise of war, their warnings buried under songs of victory. The new generations listened only to the commanders, and the commanders promised an easy victory. They said that humans would tremble at the first sight of the alien fleets, that human cities would fall like sandcastles before the tide, that human armies would scatter like dust in the wind. 100 years passed like this, 100 years of training, 100 years of building, 100 years of dreaming of Earth, and at last the moment drew near. The fleets were ready, the weapons were sharp, the soldiers were countless. The commanders stood at the edge of their world and looked toward the distant stars where Earth waited. Their voices thundered through the armies. The day had come. The humans would fall. The invasion would begin. But far away on Earth, a different story was waiting. One the aliens could not imagine. One that would turn their century of training into nothing more than ash, for humans have been watching too. Humans have been preparing in silence. And soon the invaders would learn the cost of underestimating Earth. The sky above Earth was calm at first, blue and bright, as it always was. Children laughed in the streets. Workers hurried through the cities. Soldiers trained in hidden bases, and families lived their lives with no idea that today would mark the beginning of something that had been promised for 100 years, the day the invaders came to claim what they thought was theirs. It began with a shimmer in the upper sky, a strange light that grew larger with every passing moment. People pointed and wondered if it was a storm or a comet or some new miracle of science. But deep inside the minds of those who knew the truth, there was no wonder, only fear, because they had been waiting for this sign, waiting for the day the aliens would return to Earth after their century of training and hatred. The light spread across the heavens like fire spilled over water. The blue sky turned black, the stars disappeared, and a shadow covered the planet. A shadow made not by clouds or storms, but by ships. Ships so large that they looked like mountains floating in the air, each one covered in silver armor that shone with the reflection of the sun, each one humming with power, each one filled with soldiers who had dreamed of this day since birth. The people of Earth froze, their voices turning to whispers as they watched the endless fleet descend. It was not one ship, not 10, not 100, but thousands, each one a fortress, each one a weapon. The ground trembled as their engines roared. The oceans rose in waves as their weight pressed on the atmosphere. Animals fled into forests and mountains. Birds screamed and scattered. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath as the invaders arrived. In the great cities, alarms rang out. Soldiers rushed into position. Leaders gathered in hidden bunkers. And people were told to stay inside, though many could not stop themselves from staring at the skies in terror. Children cried. Parents held them close, and old men muttered prayers, for they knew this was not a dream, but the start of a war that had been written into the stars for a century. The alien ships moved with perfect order, like a storm designed by a cruel hand, their formation flawless, their lines stretching from horizon to horizon, and at their center a massive flagship larger than any human city, a beast of steel and fire, pulsing with energy like a living heart of war. Inside it, the alien commanders stood tall, their voices sharp, their claws ready, their eyes burning with hunger for victory. They believed that in only hours Earth would kneel and humanity would end. The first wave of alien warriors prepared to land. Their dropships hung in the air like swarms of metal insects, each filled with hundreds of soldiers, each soldier armed with weapons that could shatter stone. Their armor gleamed like fire. Their chants rose like thunder. They slammed their fists against their chests and shouted the promise of conquest. They were sure they would walk on Earth and see humans crawling at their feet. But on Earth, there was no crawling, no begging, only silence and waiting, for the humans had prepared in their own way. Not with a century of open training, not with chants and parades, but with secrets, with shadows, with silence. And in that silence, they had built defenses, weapons, and plans, all hidden from alien eyes, all waiting for the moment when the first invaders stepped too close. The dropships broke through the clouds. The sound of their engines screamed across the sky. Windows shattered, car alarms wailed, dogs barked in panic, and the air grew heavy with the smell of burning fuel. The ground shook with every landing. Dust rose in thick clouds. Streets cracked beneath their weight, and the first alien soldiers marched out in perfect rows, tall and armored, their weapons glowing with cold light. The people of Earth watched from hidden shelters and broken windows, some trembling, some holding weapons of their own, some whispering that humanity would not survive, but others whispered something different, something fierce, that the aliens had made a mistake, that the humans were ready, that Earth was not weak. Those whispers spread like sparks in dry grass, small at first, but growing stronger as more people saw what waited in the shadows. The alien commanders laughed at the sight of human cities. To them, the towers of glass and steel were fragile toys. To them, the armies of Earth were nothing more than insects. To them, this battle was already won. They sent messages across their fleet declaring victory. They told their soldiers to crush resistance quickly and claim the planet with fire. They believed the war would be over before the day ended. They believed humans would be a story told in ashes. Yet far below, in hidden bases deep underground, human leaders spoke in calm voices. They did not panic. They did not tremble, for this day had been planned. For decades they had studied alien transmissions, stolen pieces of alien technology, built weapons the invaders could not imagine. And now they whispered a single order: wait, hold. Let the aliens think they have one. Let them march forward, and then strike with the fury of Earth. The alien soldiers spread through the streets, their boots heavy on the broken ground, their voices loud, their weapons glowing. They smashed doors, tore down walls, and raised their banners high. They shouted that Earth now belonged to them. But in the silence of alleys and tunnels, human eyes watched. Human hands gripped weapons. Human hearts beat faster, not with fear, but with fire. The sky was black with alien ships. The ground was crawling with alien soldiers. The air was thick with smoke and dust, and yet beneath it all something unseen was moving, something the aliens could not sense, a storm waiting to break, a storm made of human defiance, human rage, human strength, and when that storm broke, the century of alien training would mean nothing. The day of arrival had come. The aliens believed it was their victory, but the humans knew it was only the beginning. The ground shook again as more ships landed. The cities burned brighter as alien soldiers marched, and in the silence of Earth's defenses the countdown began, a countdown not to surrender, but to retaliation, a countdown to 6 minutes that would change the galaxy forever. The alien army moved like a tide across the face of Earth, their boots hammering the streets, their weapons glowing with deadly power, their voices raised in chants of victory and conquest, as if the planet already belonged to them. They had waited for this moment through 100 years of training, through endless drills and endless battles in their arenas of fire and steel, and now at last they walked on the soil of Earth with pride. The commanders watched from their towering ships high above the cities, their eyes burning with hunger, their hands gripping the cold rails of command bridges. They believed no force could stand against them. They believed the humans would crumble at the first strike, and they gave the order with voices that echoed through the fleet: strike, burn, destroy, show the humans the price of defiance. At once the sky was filled with fire. Alien cannons unleashed beams of energy that ripped through the clouds. Towers of light crashed down into the streets. Buildings, shattered glass rained like deadly rain, and firestorms swept across entire blocks. The ground shook as alien weapons carved scars into the earth. Trees fell, rivers boiled, animals fled in terror. The air filled with screams of both human and beast. The first wave of alien soldiers marched forward with perfect order, their steps like thunder, their armor shining like a river of steel. They fired their rifles into windows, into shadows, into anything that moved. They left walls burning and streets broken. They raised their banners on rooftops, and they laughed, for to them this was victory. This was the beginning of conquest, and nothing could stop it. In the cities, humans hid in shelters and basements, their ears filled with the roar of alien weapons. Mothers held their children close, fathers clenched their fists, soldiers waited in silence behind reinforced doors, their eyes fixed on screens that showed the invasion above their heads. And though fear filled every corner of the human heart, there was something else too, something sharp, something waiting, something ready. The aliens pushed deeper. They broke through defenses with ease. They mocked the resistance. They cut down any who dared to fight back, their voices loud. With cruel joy, they shouted that Earth was weak. They shouted that humans were nothing. They shouted that the century of training had made them perfect, and that perfection could not be defeated. But perfection is a lie, whispered one human commander deep in the shadows as he watched the alien strike. Perfection is blind. It believes itself unstoppable, cannot see what waits in silence. And that silence was growing stronger. With every step the aliens took, with every shot they fired, with every building they destroyed, the silence of human patience was turning into the roar of human defiance. The alien fleets above rained destruction upon oceans and forests. Waves rose like mountains, forests burned like torches, entire landscapes changed in minutes. And yet the humans did not answer, not yet. They endured the strike with teeth clenched, with eyes fixed on the countdown, with hearts burning, for they knew that every second the aliens spent in confidence was a second closer to the storm that would break. Alien soldiers smashed through schools and hospitals, tearing down walls, dragging survivors out into the streets, raising their banners high and shouting their victory chants louder. But in the shadows, human eyes watched in silence, human hands tightened on hidden triggers, human lips whispered promises of vengeance, and human minds repeated one truth over and over: wait, hold, endure, the moment is near. The alien commanders grew bolder, their laughter filling the airwaves. They declared Earth conquered. They told their fleets to spread out across the globe, to strike every city, every base, every corner of resistance. They wanted the planet silent before the sun fell. They wanted humanity crushed before the night came. They wanted to prove to the galaxy that humans were nothing more than prey. And so the alien strike grew heavier. Their ships filled the skies, their weapons shattered the land, their soldiers filled the streets with fire and noise. But beneath it all, in the deep veins of the planet, in bunkers and tunnels and secret bases, humans were moving silently like hunters in the dark, their weapons primed, their eyes unblinking, their orders clear. Wait for the moment when the invaders believe themselves victorious, and then show them what humanity truly is. A child looked out from a cracked window and saw alien soldiers marching with pride. He asked his mother why they looked so sure, why they looked so strong, and the mother whispered, because they do not know us yet, because they do not know Earth yet, because they do not know what waits for them in the shadows. The alien strike was supposed to end the war before it began. It was supposed to erase human strength in a single storm of fire. But wars are not decided by training alone, nor by weapons alone, nor by arrogance. Wars are decided by will, and in the silence of Earth, the will of humanity burned brighter than any alien weapon. The aliens marched further, their banners rising higher, their chants growing louder, their commanders speaking of the final strike that would bring Earth to its knees. But the humans listened and waited, their patience unbroken, their courage unbroken, their spirit unbroken. And with every passing minute, the trap closed tighter around the invaders who could not see what was coming. The alien strike was only the first act, the opening roar of a storm that would soon turn against them. The humans endured the flames, the humans endured the terror, the humans endured the cruelty, and in that endurance they grew stronger, their silence sharpened into a blade, their patience hardened into a shield, their anger forged in a fire that would burn the invaders faster than they could imagine. The day of arrival had begun with shadows across the sky, and now the alien strike painted those shadows with fire. But fire can fade, shadows can break, and the silence that followed would be filled not with alien chants, but with the fury of humanity. Beneath the burning cities and the broken streets, beneath the weight of alien ships that filled the sky, beneath the roar of weapons that shook the mountains, humanity waited and watched with eyes as sharp as blades. For this was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning, and hidden deep below the surface of the earth, there was a secret built in silence, a secret born from patience, a secret that the aliens could not imagine. For decades, humans had studied the skies, listening to the strange signals that crossed the black ocean of space. They had captured fragments of alien voices and alien codes. They had broken down strange messages and rebuilt them into knowledge that no invader believed they could possess. While the aliens trained for 100 years in their arenas of fire, the humans learned in silence. They learned how to bend metal, how to twist light, how to turn weakness into strength. And with every year they grew. more prepared. In vast tunnels carved beneath mountains, machines slept like beasts of steel, their bodies hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, their voices silent, but ready to roar. These were not simple weapons of war. They were born from stolen fragments of alien design and human imagination. They were stronger, faster, sharper. They carried the fury of Earth itself, and they waited for the day when the skies would fall dark and the aliens would descend with pride. Scientists had worked in secret, their hands stained with oil, their eyes burning from sleepless nights. They built engines that could bend gravity. They forged weapons that could pierce the shields of alien ships. They crafted armor that could drink the fire of the stars. They built cannons hidden in orbit, disguised as silent satellites. And every piece of their work was hidden behind layers of silence. Governments swore oaths, soldiers kept secrets entire. Generations worked without glory because they knew one day the silence would end. The alien commanders looked down at Earth and laughed, believing they faced a weak planet with nothing but fragile towers and soft people. They never saw the hidden bases buried under rock. They never felt the energy waiting in the core of human machines. They never guessed that humans had been preparing to, not in the open, but in the shadows where pride could not see and arrogance could not follow. In one hidden command center, a general stood before a wall of screens, his face calm, his voice steady. Around him, officers moved like shadows, their hands on controls, their eyes fixed on maps of the sky. Every red mark was an alien ship, every red mark a piece of the invading tide. The general raised his hand and spoke, "Not yet, hold steady, let them think they have won, let them think the planet is theirs, let them walk into the jaws of Earth before we close them shut." The alien strike continued above the city's ships, burning the sky, soldiers spreading like rivers of steel, fire rising higher with every passing hour, and still the humans did not answer. Still they waited, still they endured, for their secret weapon was not only the machines they had built, but the patience to use them at the perfect moment. Children hid in shelters, their eyes wide with fear. Mothers held them close, fathers clenched their fists and whispered that the time would come, that Earth was not defeated, that the silence was not weakness, but strength. And their words passed from one heart to another, until even in the darkest basements, there was a spark of hope burning like a hidden flame. Above the clouds, satellites shifted their paths, quiet and unseen. They looked like nothing more than machines of communication, machines of weather. But inside them slept the fury of Earth cannons powered by stolen alien cores, beams of light sharper than any sword, waiting for one command from below, one word that would turn the silent sky into a storm. In the mountains, great doors of stone waited to open behind them. Machines crouched like giants, their engines glowing faintly, their weapons locked in silence, their pilots sitting in shadows, their hands steady on the controls. They breathed slowly. They whispered to themselves. They thought of families hidden far below. They thought of Earth waiting to be free, and they promised they would not fail. The aliens laughed louder, their voices flooding the airwaves, their commanders declaring victory, their soldiers raising banners on human streets. And yet for every laugh, for every shout of pride, for every banner raised, another hidden weapon was armed, another silent machine awakened, another spark of the storm prepared to rise. The aliens did not see it, they did not feel it, they believed only in their century of training, but the truth was waiting like a knife in the dark. The general looked at the countdown on the screen, the numbers glowing like embers. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, each second heavier than iron, each second carrying the weight of an entire world waiting to strike. He whispered again, hold, the longer they believe, the stronger our blow will be, and his soldiers nodded, their hands steady, their eyes burning with silent fire. Alien ships filled the oceans with fire, alien soldiers filled the streets with terror, alien banners filled the skies with arrogance. And still the humans did not strike, because the secret weapon of Earth was not only steel and flame, it was the will to wait, it was the will to suffer in silence, until the perfect moment arrived, and when that moment came, the invaders would learn what it meant to face humanity. The mountains trembled as the hidden doors began to move. The oceans shivered as silent machines beneath the waves stirred to life. The skies cracked with invisible power as satellites aligned in perfect formation. The countdown neared its end. The general raised his hand one final time, and the order passed through the veins of Earth like lightning. Be ready, the storm begins now. The aliens did not hear the whisper of the order. They only heard their own voices of triumph. They did not see the doors opening. They only saw their banners rising. They did not feel the ground moving. They only felt the pride of conquest. And in their blindness, they smiled, believing they had won, not knowing that in the shadows humanity was about to show them the truth. The secret weapon of Earth was no longer sleeping, it was awake, and the galaxy would soon remember that humans were never weak. They were hunters in silence, and when they struck to end the battle in fire and fury. The skies of Earth were black with alien ships, their shadows covering oceans, mountains, and cities, their engines roaring like storms, their weapons glowing with the promise of fire. The aliens marched in the streets below, shouting their victory, raising their banners, laughing, as if the world already belonged to them. They had trained for 100 years for this day. They believed nothing could break their power, nothing could shake their pride. And then the silence ended. A whisper turned into thunder across the command centers of Earth. The general raised his hand and gave the order, strike. The word was simple, the word was sharp, and in that single moment, the sleeping weapons of humanity woke like beasts, rising from the deep. The mountains trembled as hidden doors of stone split open. The oceans roared as steel shapes rose from the waves. The skies cracked as silent satellites revealed their true faces, no longer tools of peace, but cannons of war. The first strike came from above. A beam of light brighter than the sun shot down from orbit, cutting through the belly of a massive alien warship. The ship that had hovered with arrogance above a human city split in half in a heartbeat, its metal frame screaming as it tore apart, fire spilling from its engines, alien soldiers inside crying out in shock. The burning wreck fell from the sky and slammed into the ground in a wave of fire and smoke. The laughter of the aliens died in that instant, replaced by silence and fear. Before they could react, the second strike came. More beams cut through the air, satellites firing in perfect rhythm, guided by human hands, each beam precise, each beam unstoppable. Alien shields shattered, alien ships burned, the black sky lit up like a storm of lightning, and in the streets below, alien soldiers looked up and felt something they had not felt in 100 years, the cold, sharp edge of fear. In the mountains, the hidden giants moved forward, machines of steel and fury, taller than towers, engines roaring, weapons blazing. They stepped into the firestorm with human pilots at their hearts. Their weapons unleashed storms of missiles and streams of energy. Alien formations that had marched with perfect order broke apart as explosions ripped through their ranks. Alien soldiers screamed as the ground beneath them split with fire, their banners falling into the dust. From the oceans rose submarines unlike any ever seen, their bodies sleek, their weapons glowing with stolen alien power. They fired into the skies missiles that split into 100 blades, striking ships that hovered above coastlines. Alien fleets that had once believed themselves untouchable screamed in chaos as fire tore through their ranks. The seas themselves seemed to rise with human fury, waves swallowing alien machines, flames reflecting on the waters as if the oceans had joined the battle. In the city, soldiers hidden in shadows emerged at last, carrying weapons built from decades of secret labor. Their rifles fired beams that pierced alien armor. Their grenades exploded with energy that cracked the ground. They moved fast, striking and vanishing, striking again like hunters in the dark. Alien soldiers who had once marched with pride now stumbled, their lines broken, their voices shaking as they shouted for commands that never came. The alien commanders above screamed in rage, their voices breaking through the fleet, their orders spilling out like fire. But their commands met silence as ship after ship burned in the sky, as soldiers below fell into chaos, as their perfect order collapsed in the face of a storm. They had never trained for 100 years of practice, could not prepare them for this 6 minutes of human fury, 6 minutes of defiance that shattered a century of arrogance. The general watched from his command center, his eyes steady, his voice calm, as he gave each order, fire here, hold there, strike again, do not let them breathe. His officers moved like shadows, their hands steady, their voices sharp. Every strike, perfect, every strike time like the beating of a single heart. Humanity was not scattered, humanity was united, and that unity struck harder than any weapon. In the streets, alien soldiers dropped their weapons, their chants of victory turning into screams of fear, their banners falling into fire. they looked to the skies for strength, but found only flames. They looked to their commanders for guidance, but found only silence. They looked to each other and saw only terror. Their pride melted into dust as the storm of earth raged around them. A child hiding in a basement looked out through a crack and saw the sky lit with fire, saw alien ships fall like broken stars, saw human weapons roar with unstoppable power. He turned to his mother and whispered, "We are not losing, we are fighting." And the mother smiled through her tears because she knew the truth. The invaders were not winning, they were breaking. Minute by minute, the battle grew fiercer. The aliens tried to regroup, tried to fight back, but every move they made met a wall of fire. Every command they gave was answered with silence. As another ship burned, another unit fell, another banner vanished. The perfect army that had trained for 100 years was falling apart in 6 minutes of chaos. And as the 6th minute came, the storm reached its peak. The skies of Earth burned with the wreckage of alien fleets. The oceans churned with broken machines. The mountains shook with the roar of human weapons. The cities echoed with the cries of invaders who no longer believed in their own strength. The arrogance that had carried them across the stars crumbled in the dust of Earth. The general lowered his hand. The command center filled with silence. Except for the crackle of fires on screens, the 6 minutes had ended, and yet the echoes of fury still roared across the planet. Humanity had struck back, not with fear, not with weakness, but with power born of patience, with rage born of survival, with unity born of Earth itself. The aliens had come with a century of training, but they had been broken in 6 minutes. And the lesson was written in fire across the sky. The alien commanders stood in silence on their great ships, their claws gripping the cold rails, their eyes wide with disbelief. The voices that once thundered with victory now cracked with fear. The screens before them showed fire after fire, ship after ship, falling into ruined, soldiers scattering in the streets, banners burning in dust. The invasion that was meant to be perfect, the invasion that was promised as destiny, was breaking before their eyes. 100 years of training shattered in 6 minutes, 100 years of pride torn apart by the fury of Earth. The commanders screamed orders, their voices sharp, their anger wild. Regroup, hold the line, strike again, do not let them advance. But their words were drowned by the chaos of burning ships, by the screams of soldiers who could no longer hear, by the silence of officers who had already fallen to human fire. The fleets above Earth twisted in confusion, ships colliding as they tried to turn, ships breaking as they tried to flee. Beams of light from human satellites cut through their formations. Missiles from the oceans tore their shields apart. Cannons from the mountains split their engines in half. The perfect order of alien strategy melted into chaos. The songs of victory turned into cries for survival. On the ground, alien soldiers who had marched with pride stumbled in fear, their lines broken, their weapons slipping from their claws. They looked to their commanders for strength, but saw only silence. They looked to the skies for hope, but saw only wreckage. They shouted to one another, but their voices carried no unity, no power, only panic. The pride that once filled their hearts was gone, replaced by the cold weight of fear. The humans did not slow, they pressed harder. Their hidden machines stormed the streets, their weapons roared, their soldiers struck with fire and steel. They moved like shadows and thunder. At once, every strike perfect, every step precise. They were no longer the hunted, they were the hunters, and the aliens who had come with arrogance felt their own strength crumble. Alien banners that once stood tall on rooftops fell into flames, their bright colors turning to ash, their symbols crushed under human boots. The chants of conquest were drowned by the roar of explosions, by the cries of defeat. The streets that had echoed with alien pride now echoed with alien fear. The commanders shouted for reinforcements, but reinforcements never came. Fleets that were meant to strike together were already burning, soldiers that were meant to march as one were already falling apart. The invasion that was to be the greatest triumph of their race was turning into the greatest shame the galaxy would ever witness. In a broken street, an alien soldier fell to his knees, his weapon slipping from his hand, his voice shaking as he whispered, "We trained for this, we prepared for this, how can this be?" And beside him another soldier shouted, "It is impossible, they are only humans, they are weak, they are soft, they cannot do this." And yet the truth burned before their eyes. Every ship that fell, every comrade that screamed, every weapon that failed shouted the same truth: humans were not. Weak humans were not prey, humans were. Fury given shape. The skies filled with falling fire, alien ships crashing like broken stars, the oceans swallowed the wreckage whole, the mountains echoed with the roar of victory, the cities rose with defiance, and the aliens who had believed themselves unstoppable now searched for escape, their voices shaking with fear. Retreat, retreat, retreat. But retreat was not simple. The humans had closed the trap. The humans had prepared for this day. Every path was fire, every exit was blocked, every attempt to flee ended in flames. The aliens who had once spread across Earth like a storm now found themselves cornered like prey. The hunters had become the hunted, the conquerors had become the broken. The commanders felt the weight of failure crash down upon them. They remembered the promises they had made to their people. They remembered the oaths sworn for a century. They remembered the pride that had carried them across the stars. And now all of it was nothing, all of it was ash in the winds of earth. They struck their command tables with fury. They shouted until their voices cracked, but their fleets were gone, their armies shattered, their power broken. Human soldiers moved through the streets with steady steps, their rifles glowing, their eyes sharp, their voices silent. They did not chant, they did not sing, they did not laugh. They struck with purpose, they struck with fury, they struck until the alien banners were ash and the alien voices were silence. And then they moved forward again, ready for the next line, ready for the next strike, ready to finish what had begun. Alien soldiers dropped to the ground, some begged, some cried, some tried to fight. But their strikes were weak, their hearts broken, their spirits shattered. They had been told for a century that they were perfect, that they were destiny, that humans were nothing. And now the truth cut deeper than any blade. Humans were everything they had been told to despise and fear, and now they knew why. The collapse of pride spread through the alien ranks like fire through dry grass. One by one, they broke one by one. They fell, their unity gone, their discipline gone, their courage gone. The army that had been trained for 100 years was undone, not by a century of battle, but by 6 minutes of human defiance, 6 minutes that would echo forever. In the skies, the last great flagship tried to rise, its engines burning, its shields failing. The commander inside roared with fury, shouting to his soldiers, shouting to his ancestors, shouting to the stars that they could not fall, that they must not fall. But even his voice trembled, even his claws shook as human fire cut through his ship, as alarm screamed around him, as flames swallowed his bridge. And in that final moment, he understood the truth that had been hidden for a century. Humans were the storm that no training could survive. The fleets were gone, the soldiers broken, the banners ash, the voices silent. And in the ruins of their pride, the aliens who had come to conquer now understood the lesson they had refused to learn. Earth was not weak, Earth was not prey, Earth was the place where arrogance came to die. The battlefield grew silent as smoke drifted across broken cities. The ruins glowed with fire, and the sky was painted with the falling wreckage of alien ships. The humans stood tall, their weapons still warm, their eyes cold with resolve. They had defended their world, and they had done it in only 6 minutes. The surviving aliens crawled from the shadows, their claws trembling, their voices weak. The pride that once filled their hearts was gone, their banners had turned to ash, their commanders had fallen in silence, and their fleets that once darkened the skies were scattered like dust in the wind. The survivors whispered among themselves, their words heavy with shame. How could this be? How could a world so small destroy a force trained for 100 years? Their voices carried no answer, only despair, only the truth that burned in their minds. Humans were not prey, humans were not weak, humans were the storm that no strategy could resist. Ships that still floated in orbit flickered with broken light. Their crews whispered into the void, their messages carried across the stars, not of victory, not of conquest, but of warning. Do not come to Earth, do not challenge the humans, do not repeat the mistake of arrogance, for Earth is the grave of pride. In the far corners of the galaxy, the message began to spread. Worlds that had once laughed at Earth now listened with fear. Empires that had once dreamed of conquest now whispered in silence. The humans had crushed a century of alien training in 6 minutes, and that story became a shadow that followed every starship, a shadow that crept into every council hall, a shadow that grew in the hearts of every race that had once looked upon Earth with hunger. On the ground, the last alien soldiers gathered in broken groups, their heads lowered, their weapons cast aside. They begged for mercy, they begged for life, their voices weak, their eyes wide. Humans who had lost families looked upon them with cold fury. Some wanted revenge, some wanted silence. But the leaders of Earth gave only one command: let them live, Let them crawl back to the stars. Let them carry the story themselves. And so the aliens who survived left the world they had sworn to conquer. They boarded their shattered ships. They lifted into the dark sky, their engines weak, their hearts weaker, their voices trembling, as they spoke the same words again and again, never again, never again. In their homeworlds, a return was met with silence. Families who had waited a century for victory wept at the sight of broken soldiers. Leaders who had promised glory hid their faces from the shame, and the voices of survivors echoed. In every hall, humans are not prey, humans are not weak, humans are fire. The tale of Earth spread like flame through the stars. Storytellers carried it in whispers. Commanders repeated it with fear. Scholars wrote it into records. Children heard it in the night. And empires that had once believed in their own power now measured every plan against one truth: never underestimate humans. In the deep chambers of alien councils, arguments raged. Some said humans must be destroyed before they grow stronger. Others said to attack was to die. Others said to leave Earth in silence and never return. But none could erase the terror that had been born in 6 minutes. None could erase the warning that burned in the eyes of the survivors. The humans did not sing a victory. They did not boast. They did not send their message across the stars. Instead, they returned to their homes. They buried their dead. They rebuilt their cities. They stood together in silence and strength, for they knew the galaxy was watching. And they knew the lesson was not just for the aliens, but for themselves. Humanity had become a name that carried weight in the stars. The surviving alien commanders gathered in hidden chambers, their voices bitter, their claws shaking. They argued about the future. They argued about honor. They argued about survival. But their words carried no pride, only fear, only shame, only memory of the day when Earth destroyed a century of hope in 6 minutes. On the streets of alien worlds, statues that were meant to honor the victory of Earth now stood as scars, broken, covered in dust, abandoned by all. No songs were sung, no banners were raised, only silence remained, a silence heavier than any weapon, a silence that whispered of humans. And in the hearts of the galaxy, a new law was spoken: do not underestimate Earth, do not mock the humans, do not believe arrogance will save you, for if you do, you will find only ruin. You will find only fire. You will find only the lesson burned into the stars. Children on distant worlds listened to the story, their eyes wide, their voices quiet. They asked their parents, is it true? Did humans really defeat them in 6 minutes? And the parents answer with fear, yes, it is true. Yes, it is the warning we must never forget. The name of Earth spread like thunder, carried by every survivor, carried by every whisper. It became not the name of prey, not the name of weakness, but the name of fear and respect. Earth, the world that turned pride into dust. Earth, the world that shattered a century in minutes. Earth, the world that no invader could conquer. And so the lesson was carved into history, not with songs, not with triumph, but with silence and fear. The lesson that would echo across stars for generations. The lesson that no training, no strategy, no arrogance could erase. The lesson of 6 minutes, the lesson of humanity. The galaxy would never be the same, for the shadow of Earth would always follow the proud, the ambitious, the hungry. They would see the ruins of alien fleets. They would hear the cries of broken soldiers. They would remember the tale of humans who stood against the storm, and they would whisper the same words again and again: do not underestimate Earth, do not underestimate the humans. The lesson was written in fire. The lesson was written in blood. The lesson was written in silence that no star could escape, and the survivors who fled carried it like a scar forever.